So I just went back and watched all of Trevor Lawrence's 2020 tape, and my main conclusion is that Trevor Lawrence is human sometimes. What do I mean by that? Well, basically, there are moments when I say, hey, he has a flaw or two. There definitely is some, I think, surprising tape in there, something that you sort of only watch the highlights and think he's perfect. There are some concerns I have about him. He is not a perfect prospect, I don't think, which I know is sacrilege to say because it seems like you can't criticize Lawrence no matter what. So I'm going to get into that. But why do I say sometimes? Well, because sometimes he's just a robot. Sometimes he just makes these throws and it's just so ridiculously consistent. It's insane. And honestly, I'd rather start off with some positives. So let's just start off right there. So let's go ahead and start off with this play. This is against Pittsburgh. What they're doing is that this is a pretty clever concept that Clemson has come up with. Honestly, it's something they do a pretty good amount, which is they're going to fake a screen to Lawrence's right. They have three receivers run deep, sort of fake as though they could be blocking or just trying to get defensive players to run deep along with them. Then Lawrence fakes as though he's hitting the player in motion who's going to that side of the field. But then he's going to actually hit the receiver who's going to kind of fake as though he's just not in this play, but then going to run deep. So watch the receiver, watch how he kind of stands and then goes, takes a couple steps. And at this point, Lawrence pretty much has to make this throw now. There really isn't any separation. This could get open, it could not. It's hard to really say at this point. The one thing that you feel pretty confident about is that the way that the defensive back is almost falling over, he's probably not going to have time to look over and try and see where the ball is. So really, you just want to get the ball over to the defensive back, which is probably what you should do in this situation regardless. And watch this throw. I mean, it's just a really accurate throw, and they're able to get a big gain on that one. This next one's another example of something very similar, where what's going to end up happening on this play is that it's going to be it's a man coverage play. You see the route on the screen. That's the one going to get open. But watch how right when this play starts, while there is going to be an opening, it's far from wide open. I mean, at this point, it's going to take basically a perfect throw for this to be a completion. But again, Lawrence, he makes just an insane amount of perfect throws that aren't just exactly accurate, but just look nice coming out of his hands too. This one is also, I mean, look at that. That's just a thing of beauty right there. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better than that one. Yes, it had to be a diving catch, but that was by design because if you throw it shorter, then it could be incomplete or even intercepted. We'll show one more of these types of plays. Again, man coverage, go route on the top of the screen. But watch the pressure. So Lawrence takes the snap. There is pressure up the middle, and he's going to get hit as he's thrown. So again, not a ton of separation on this play. He's now hit as he's thrown. So what is he going to do? Well, of course, he just makes a perfect throw that should have been a touchdown if it wasn't dropped. I mean, that's just fantastic right there. Truly just incredible accuracy. And that's what I mean by he's only sometimes human, because when he's not human and when he is just an alien like he can be, those are three examples. But I'm telling you, he'll just do that every play. He'll just be right on the money, play after play after play. And it's really hard to show that in a YouTube video unless I were to show like 15. Honestly, 15 wouldn't even be enough. I'd have to show like 100 different plays, which just obviously that wouldn't work. So you'll have to take my word for it. Or you could just watch the tape yourself. And especially the first few games of the season, he was just red hot. And he's just not missing any throws ever, which is just insane. When he's on, he is on. So I said that there's some negatives too. Now I should probably transition into some of the negatives. And honestly, one of the negatives is a pretty common thing that star quarterbacks have to go through, which is just Lawrence absolutely feels as though he can make every single throw. Like, watch. Let's start off with this one. So what's going to end up happening on this play is it's a Tampa 2, and you see the route that, could get open. This would be better if it was just like a traditional cover 2, but since the player who's covering the midfield right there is going to be going further deep, this now makes it just a little bit more difficult. But watch, once this play starts, yes, a little bit more difficult. It's not wide open by any means, but there certainly is a window where Lawrence could make this throw if he wants to. So, he's already thrown the ball, but you can see why. It's not like if this is a horrible decision by any means. It's just a difficult throw, and if he's inaccurate, it's going to be an interception probably. And this is inaccurate, and that absolutely should have been an interception, just a drop right there by the defender. And I think that's a good example of showing that when you make things difficult on yourself, then when you slightly miss a throw, it becomes an interception. Whereas if you were to, make things a little easier, it would just be an incompletion. So when you feel like you can make every throw, it can come back to bite you. There's also this one, which is going to be a pretty interesting play. I think it's going to be man coverage, and you see the route that receiver is running. And this is a weird route in this situation with the hash mark, snapping the ball onto hash marks all the way on the top of the screen. He's going to be running all the way over to the other side of the field. So unless Lawrence already kind of runs over in that direction, this is probably not going to work out too well, you would assume. Once this play starts, you notice that, it's a pretty well ran route to start off, and maybe Lawrence could make this throw. He could try to do sort of a back shoulder type thing, but ideally you'd either want to make this throw now or give it a second and try to, then put some air under it. But Lawrence is just going to do something a bit surprising, a bit just confusing, I would say. Watch him wait a little bit longer and then try to back shoulder throw, and at that point, that could have easily been an interception. He had to just be a little bit quicker on the release on that one. And again, he's used to his receivers sort of helping him out there to some degree as well. This is something that in the NFL, these were both drops. These would both be interceptions in the NFL, and it will be sort of a learning curve. And I wouldn't be shocked at all. In fact, I think I would be shocked if he doesn't end up with double-digit interceptions his rookie season just because of his play style. Like one more, and this is a big one, right? It's a 7-point game, so midway, a little bit past midway through the third. So just getting the 3 points here does go a long way. I mean, it's still plenty of time left, still 20 minutes left in the game, but you'd like to go up 2 scores right here in a 7-point game. It's 3rd down and goal. And you see there is a route that could get open against this type of coverage. And I think this is just a classic case of, in this situation, don't take this chance. Like, watch, once this play starts, I mean, there's really, Lawrence makes this throw, and this is such a risky throw. Unless you just never noticed the player who's closer to the top of the screen, in which case that's just a bad read, which I would almost feel better about it being a bad read, just because that's sort of easier to pick up on than if your decision making itself is a bit rough. But to me, this is just a not great decision. And as you see, this one does get intercepted right there, which at the time, that's very much not a good thing. Now, I should be clear, he only threw 5 interceptions last year. So it's not like he's turning the ball over constantly, but he is putting himself in a position where he could turn over the ball a good amount in the NFL. And I do expect there to be some learning curve. It's not a disaster. It's not the end of the world. And like I said, this happens to almost honestly, it happens to every single college quarterback going into the NFL to some degree. I think it could hit him harder just because, yes, he felt like he could make every throw in college, and he kind of could. I mean, he's really accurate, right? So there is a reason for this confidence. But in the NFL, sometimes you think you can fit it through a window, and literally by the time the defensive backs get over there, there's no window. No matter how accurate you are, it's going to get knocked away just because of the window is too tight when you make the throw. So I do think that it's something that's slightly concerning, and I do think it's a fair criticism. I don't think it's a nitpick. I think that this is a fair criticism and a fair thing to be worried about if you're a Jaguars fan. One more criticism of Lawrence here. What's going to end up happening is that this is going to be a go route, and the route in the play concept isn't really worth mentioning too much. It's more going to be about how he reacts to this pressure. Watch how once this play starts, you notice how he's going to get hit right before he's thrown, or right after he's thrown, excuse me. But look at how he's making this throw. He's completely leaning back. Obviously, this is not really proper, feet placement and proper throwing motion whatsoever. He's trying to avoid a big hit, which I do understand. But sometimes you have to either make the decision to go down and avoid the hit, or make the throw and step into it. You can't always, honestly, you usually don't want to make throws like this unless it's either an easy throw or someone's wide open. Because watch him flip it like that. And also, by the way, there was nothing open. So that's another concern I do have with Lawrence, kind of, is, Justin Fields gets a lot of criticism for being a one-read quarterback. Well, that's a lot of what Lawrence had to do in college. It really is. And honestly, you pretty much never saw him play when things broke down. pretty much the plays always worked at Clemson. So we don't know exactly how good he is when things go wrong. Like this one's going to be another very similar example. You're going to see a very similar throwing motion on this one to the one you saw on the last one, where you see that's the route he wants to throw to. But again, watch how he actually throws it. Lawrence takes the snap. You see him fake a play action, and then he throws it just so almost again. I've talked about this before. It's kind of like that baseball throw. He just like snaps because he's trying to get rid of the ball so quickly. He wants to get rid of it, obviously, which does make sense. And in this situation, it's not the worst thing in the world to throw it like that just because you're trying to get it there. But I would much rather him sort of go through his full progression of, his full throwing motion, because your accuracy is just going to falter there when you throw it like that. The reality is when you're in your typical throwing motion, you just sort of get to the hang of, okay, I know how much power I have to, use to get the ball to that spot. But when you throw it like this and like this and like this and like this, well, now you have to have a different sense of how much power you have to throw for each motion. So you could have, a couple different motions if you want to, but it's just more difficult that way. And especially when you have one motion that you only do in sort of those weird situations, you just don't want to see it. You want to see his motions stay the same, or at least as close to the same, being as much of the same as possible. And it wasn't on a couple of those plays, which resulted in some bad throws. So again, not the end of the world. Mac Jones does this as well. I've criticized him for it. So it's a pretty common thing that happens to college players, and it's not the end of the world, but another concern. And I don't get why people feel like we can't criticize Trevor Lawrence. These are very real things. This isn't a nitpick. We've seen guys do this, and that can really hurt their game in a big way. So this one is a bit more nitpicky than I think the first one about he thinks he can make every throw. That's a bit more concerning. But even so, you can fix that. I mean, Baker Mayfield was that way. He's improved a lot since then. So neither one of these are criticisms for me saying don't draft Trevor Lawrence, but they are both, I still think, criticisms. But also, there's a lot of good that Lawrence can do, even one under pressure. But like, for example, right here, there's only going to be one thing to watch pre-snap, just the left guard going up to block that defensive tackle. The Syracuse defensive tackle is going to do a very good job on this play. Watch. Lawrence takes the snap, runs the play action, is under immediate pressure, but is able to get out of this and throw the ball away. That's pretty good. He's had some issues with this too, to some degree, of his pocket presence. His pocket presence certainly isn't as good as, say, Zach Wilson, who Lawrence has gotten compared to some degree. But it's still pretty good. And he has the athleticism, once he realizes things are going wrong, to get out of there. So that's good, even if he's not necessarily always the best at just reading what's going on. Now let's go over to this one, because people keep talking about how, Zach Wilson, he's so great at being able to throw off balance and throw on the run. And while Wilson probably is a little bit better at that than Lawrence, Lawrence is really good at that too. So let's not try and pretend like Lawrence is some statue out there. On this play, it's going to be a cover 2 zone, and it's going to actually be the route you see on the screen that Lawrence is eventually going to want to hit. But watch, once this play starts, Lawrence is going to realize that he can step up, and he has potential room to run if he wants to, and he has to also step up given the pressure on the edge. But he also looks over and says, hey, if I can hit that guy, we can get a first down right here. And so watch him, make this throw on the run. It's a very accurate throw. Again, he's someone who he can make these types of accurate throws on the run. That one wasn't caught through no fault of his own. It was a really good pass. I also like this one. This one just feels like a Patrick Mahomes play, and you'll see why. So it's man coverage, and watch what happens. Right when this play starts, Lawrence takes the snap, and he's going to run up to the top half of the screen. And what you see is really that guy is kind of Lawrence's best shot. Nothing is really that open. So he's already got himself a lot of time. And now maybe he can make this throw. Again, this is something you see Mahomes do. It's something you see a lot of other quarterbacks kind of throw it away. And there's a difference between thinking you can make every throw and just waiting as long as possible and not giving up on a play or giving up on a throw until you absolutely have to. So watch Lawrence. Eventually, he is going to make this throw. It just bounces off of 11's chest right there. Got a little bit surprised by it, I think, maybe. But, I mean, that's again, that's right out of the Mahomes playbook. Almost going out of bounds, still making a throw over the middle of the field to nearly get a touchdown right there. That's just fun stuff. And finally, one more tool in his tool belt that is also kind of like a Mahomes type thing is he can run with the football. He's an absolute athlete. He's incredible with his ability to run with the football, and it's really an underrated part of his game. I imagine teams aren't going to want to do that too much once he gets to the NFL just because, you don't want to wear him out, but at the same time, there is added value here. This time it's going to be kind of like an option play where he fakes as though he's going to give it off to the halfback, and the hope is that this is either, it's always hard to tell if these are read plays or if this is just a design quarterback run all the way, but we'll assume he has to make the read. The way he makes this read is he looks over at the Virginia Tech player who I have circled in black, and if he runs over the middle, Lawrence keeps the ball himself and runs to the outside. If he stays to the outside, then obviously Lawrence just gives the ball to his halfback, and you've gained an extra blocker. But watch how once this play starts, watch how, he does get to the outside, and it's just Lawrence so quick and falls down, forward. He's a big guy, so he's not an easy player to bring down whatsoever. There's honestly a ton that's just so good about Trevor Lawrence, and my few nitpicks are totally things that I think can be solved. And honestly, my concerns about Trevor Lawrence are that I'm a bit concerned he might not be a Hall of Famer. Like that's already what I'm thinking in my head, just because of how hyped up he is. I honestly think that in this draft, it sucks because I think there's two clear-cut first overall pick caliber players. I think there's two generational talent prospects in this draft. Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence are both just insanely good, and they're both fantastic prospects, which is just, it's frustrating because, for Jacksonville, you're probably thinking, great, what if we screw this up? And it's tough. I mean, I guess there is the concern. The only way I can really see this being a bust would be for Lawrence is that if he throws too many interceptions, if he doesn't adjust to the style of the NFL, I do think that it'll be a little bit more difficult when he has to sort of go to a more NFL offense where you have to get to your second and third read quicker. But then again, as long as he's not a dummy, he should be able to learn that stuff, and it shouldn't be the end of the world. I don't think. He's such a good prospect. Is he better than Zach Wilson? I don't know yet. To be honest, I really don't. Even though I've done evaluations for both of them, I feel pretty confident about how I feel about both of them. They're so close. I think I'm going to make a video just about that and sort of talk about what I value more. Not necessarily who's better, but just what I value more. Because right now, I think you could argue either one. So that's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.